Before having kids, I was a serious type A human. All of my life was dictated by my external success, dictated by my profession. Once we had a child, everything in me said, this is the season where you're meant to be home and raise your babies. You have to actually listen to your own gut and be like, okay, what does this human need? Close out the noise of everybody saying, no, I swear by this.
I was the guy that there was not a white spot in my calendar. Every minute was accounted for, and I was constantly on the go. I was spending a lot of money on coaches and doing all the things, but it wasn't working. And honestly, I looked at Shannon over there, like all zenned out in our bedroom for free. And I'm like, what's the catch?
The biggest shift for me was the intentional commitment to start my day looking for the things that were creating that feeling of gratitude and actually taking the time to sit with it, to feel it again, to start to create that shift. If we're constantly telling that filter, oh, look, there's another thing that's going wrong. Oh, look, there's another thing that's going wrong. That's the filter that your body's going to keep looking for, because that's what you're saying that it's supposed to find, because it's there to protect you.
Men tend to focus as a provider instinct on what could go wrong so they can make sure they can stop it before it happens.
You cannot feel stressed and blessed at the same time.
Yes.
So doctors, scientists, fMRI has proven that. It doesn't, you cannot, so you can alter your state immediately by changing from stress to thinking about gratitude.
Yes.
1 in 4 kids in America right now are battling some type of mental hurdle. And what we tend to do as a society is focus on crisis management. The human experience is a miracle. So we want to highlight that miracle.
Children need tools. They need tools that they can reach for, that they feel empowered in those moments to start to support themselves.
Gratitude is a beautiful bridge to connect humans, not to create 100% agreement. And that's not the point. If you're in a disagreement with your spouse and you hold their hand and start saying what you're grateful for about them, it will take about 3 minutes for you to start laughing.
This is Sparta!
Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick. And today we're going to explore what it means to lead with purpose and live with impact. I couldn't be more excited to have my friends Matthew and Shannon Missimer with me, the visionary founders of the Motion of Gratitude. Their work focuses on enhancing mental health and wellness through the power of intentional gratitude. And today we're going to explore how gratitude can be a game changer, not for you, just for your mindset, but also for your relationships and overall well-being. If you've ever felt like you're just going through the motions, this episode will show you how gratitude can bring you back to presence, purpose, and power. So Matthew and Shannon, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, Josh.
We're happy to be here.
Start the day.
I see that. That's right. I see the chartreuse bands behind you. I got mine on. I know you guys are both wearing them.
That's right.
That's awesome. That's such a color that sticks out. So let's start with that because I know you're really intentional about that color, and I just brought it up. So here's my first ADD question of the day.
Bring them on.
Why did you choose the chartreuse color for it? And what do the bracelets mean?
So I'm all here for that ADD question because I've been waiting for the opportunity to share this story. So 7 years ago, when the Motion of Gratitude got started, again, it got started completely by personal need and realizing I was at a point in my life where I was just going through the motions and I was missing out on all the incredible things that were still happening in my life. But I was so bogged down and just caught up in the darkness, in the hard, in the intensity of the season. And I knew I didn't want to miss that season. And as I started to get really intentional with my gratitude practices and actually learning what it means to be present, because I don't know if I actually knew what that meant before that time in my life. And I started getting intentional with these practices. And, I just, through this intentional shift and showing up a different way, after a couple of weeks, I looked back and it was like, oh my gosh, there was such a shift. And I started to see the choices that I was making. And I realized that this wasn't just something that I needed to do for myself. It was something we had to share with other people. And as I started to think about it beyond like, okay, this is an idea to kind of creating a brand and creating a bigger picture for it. I knew that we needed an anchor for people through this experience. So we wanted them to be able to anchor into gratitude and have something that was a symbol for them when they're in their life to really connect to bring them back to that present moment. I know so many of us can think, whether it's from the athletic, everybody talks about having that anchor point, and whether it's athletics or other things in our life, just being able to get back to that space and really connect to it. And I remember we had started to think about, okay, this is going to be the main color. And then I knew, I had an idea of a color, and Matt's like, no, you need something that's really going to pop. And we couldn't necessarily figure out what it was. And our oldest daughter at the time, she kept making me play the song Shotgun by George Ezra over and over and over again. And it was like days and days. And we're like in that, really that creation phase. And I was like, why is she making me play this song? So I was like, okay, let's listen to the words a little bit deeper. Let's get intentional. And the line in the song is, time flies by in the yellow and green. Stick around and you'll see what I mean. And I was like, all right, yellow and green, yellow and green. And so I looked up what is the color between yellow and green, and it's chartreuse. And it's like, that's the color. That's the pop. That's that connection that, for our story, it's like time has flown by in this chartreuse. It's created a new way of seeing life. And it just felt like that, like her kind of having that space to create that opportunity for us. It just felt like, yeah, this is it. That was one of those aha moments where it's like, yeah, that's the color.
And I would love to expand on one point there, which is fun. So, Josh, this bracelet is designed around a Costa Rican type style. And 7 years ago, Costa Rica was not a part of our story. So when this was created and designed, we didn't know that the path was going to lead there, where we spent a substantial amount of time there. So it's pretty cool. And then, it's evolved for me. Like if I look out in nature, it's one of the most prevalent colors is between yellow and green, which is chartreuse.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, so since we're going back and you're talking about how this was coming about, what was the waterfall moment for you, Shannon, in 2018 that really set this in motion?
Yeah. So before having kids, I was a serious type A human. All of my life was dictated by my external success, dictated by my profession. And if somebody told me I was going to be good at something, it was like, that's the path I'm taking, and kind of going on this route of external success. And once we had our first child, everything in me said, this is the season where you're meant to be home and raise your babies. That was a drastic shift for me as somebody who was like, what do I do? What's my playbook? And I'm so good at following that direction. Not having that definitely took some adjusting. I would say it was a gift. Our first child, she was a trick baby. Our oldest, I was like, oh, I got this. Like I could keep her on the schedules. I could parent her. Like my style of parenting just worked so well with her. And I think
she was in bed every night, like 7:31.
Yeah, it's like, she, every night we had such a rhythm, her sleep schedule. I was like, oh, I got this. Like everything that I did in this life, I could bring into, this parenting. And
so why do people say parenting's so hard when you get that trick baby?
Exactly. Like, oh, I got this. I so got this. And it's like, yeah, let's have another one. And then the second kid's like, nope. Everything that worked with the first is not going to work, So it was such this moment of intensity. Our second, she just had a different plan the second she got here. And she was like, nope, we're not doing things that way. Nope, that's not going to work for me. She had a huge sensitivity to life. Just like feelings.
Any human other than Shannon.
Any human. So, she wouldn't take a bottle. She was up crying. She had that cry, I think most people say you can differentiate your child's cries based on if they're hungry, tired, hurt. She just had a screeching cry, no matter what it was. And so my nervous system was shot. Like I wasn't sleeping, and I was just so caught up in the negativity of everything that was going on. And, as somebody who could dig myself out to that point, this was the first time I couldn't dig out. And Matt would come home, and he would, have, as he would have these like really intense days in the office. And then he would get home and I would just dump and be like, this happened and this happened and this happened. And, he finally one day, trying to be as kind as possible, came home and he was like, Shannon, you're going to have to be more grateful. And I was like, really? Like that's what you choose to tell me in this moment? You think I have to be more grateful? So it took a couple days to like come off the anger of it. But I sat with it for a bit and I was like, why is this making me so annoyed and so frustrated? And just got to a point where I was like, he's just so right. He's like, I'm missing everything. Like, we've worked so hard to get here. We wanted all this so bad, like these were the moments we were supposed to really be in. And I'm missing all of it, like we have a beautiful family. We have a home that we've worked hard for. Like we have these relationships and I'm just missing all of it. So that was really the trigger to be like, okay, it's time to make a shift. I know I want to be here. So I have to shift my perspective. I'm not going to change them. I have to change the way that I'm showing up. So I got really intentional with my gratitude practices and again, learning to be present and what that means, and it changed everything for us. That was the catalyst almost 7 years ago.
That's awesome. So we did not have a trick baby, the first one. Ours was born 5 weeks early, and she was a little angel for the first 5 weeks. And then come her normal due date, it was like 6 months of colic. And we often look back at that and go, wait, we chose to have 3 more kids after like 6 months of Jenna rocking her for 3 to 6 hours a night, trying to get her to sleep.
Yes. There's amnesia. Like there's complete amnesia. You get to that point and you're like, oh, that wasn't that bad. And then you're like, oh my gosh, like, oh, that was so intense. It's such an intense season, but
yeah,
that was Quinny. She had, the colic. Same thing.
Oh yeah.
It was
it's such a mystery because you try everything that every mother that's previously had a kid with colic tried, from the charcoal drops to literally sleeping with a little bit of an incline because, you hear about it being kind of acid reflux type thing. Like you try everything and none of it works. You just grit through it and try to be as patient with each other as possible and raise your baby.
Exactly. You really do. And yeah, it's in those moments where you have to actually listen to your own gut and be like, okay, what does this human need? Like, close out the noise of everybody saying, no, I swear by this works. And it's like, okay, I need to actually sit and see what I feel like my child needs and kind of go from there. So yeah, it's a heck of a journey.
Yeah. So like you said, Matthew and I grew up in the same industry, high stress financial industry, a lot of pressure on us as not only advisors, but leaders. So Matthew, I often describe you to people as like the most grounded, like peaceful human I know, but I know it hasn't always been that way. So share a little bit about your journey over the last number of years.
Well, that's very nice of you, Josh. Shannon's like smiling over here.
In agreement.
Yeah, I think we were so blessed to be in an organization that was breathing so deeply into us. And I was very I was the guy that there was not a white spot in my calendar. Every minute was accounted for, and I was constantly on the go and very intentional, but in a very small lane, which was very professionally driven. And my path and journey with the motion of gratitude was, in the beginning, I thought I was just supporting Shannon's journey of healing through this process of motherhood. It wasn't till 2019 when I was confronted with a situation where I left the company that we had been working for, and I had to really face some of my own demons of why I felt that the world was upside down inside my psyche. And I was spending a lot of money on coaches and doing all the things, but it wasn't working. And honestly, I looked at Shannon over there, like all zenned out in our bedroom for free. And I'm like, what's the catch? Like, what's the deal? So then I became Shannon's first little experiment, I think, to the external world. And I just embraced her process. In 2019, I left, I left that company, went to another company, migrated all my clients. I had a good liquidation event. So like from the outside looking in, Josh, you would think, man, everything should be great. But it was the beginning of a very uncertain, unstable time in my psyche. And embracing gratitude intentionally, without it, I don't know what I would do. And then we, bought the RV, went on the road. We lived in 410 square feet as a family of 5, traveling all through COVID. And I had given up drinking alcohol because I knew it wasn't the right time in my life for it. So there were so many things changing and pivoting. If I didn't have an anchor point, it would have fallen apart.
Mm. So talk more about that anchor point and how you've incorporated it, because what I know, and I know you guys know, but the audience probably is just getting a little glimpse of it, is it's a true practice, right? Much like yoga, much like meditation, much like prayer. And so how do you guys go about your practice? Give a little insights to what it looks like to rewire the brain for this gratitude. And perhaps like we can get into the science after this, but like go through some of your practices and what it looks like to start the process of rewiring the brain for gratitude.
Yeah. So I would say the biggest thing that I have found, because there's a lot of people when we start talking about gratitude, they're like, oh, I'm grateful. Like, check, I got that box, and I was the same way. Like, it was like, oh yeah, I'm always saying thank you. I'm writing the thank you notes. I'm going through the motion of, talking about gratitude. And I think we kind of live in this culture of like hashtag grateful, all the time, but
Hashtag blessed, hashtag grateful.
Exactly. Like we're deep in that season. But I think the biggest shift for me was the intentional commitment to start my day looking for the things that were creating that feeling of gratitude, and actually taking the time to sit with it, to feel it again, to start to create that shift. So kind of explain that a little bit more. So when I first started, my mind was, when I would wake up, the process would be, the kids didn't sleep through the night. I'm already tired. I'm frustrated. I'm overwhelmed. I'm already
Matt's
angry.
At the gym already.
Yeah, Matt's already gone. My nervous system shot. One of the kids came in screaming, so my cortisol levels are through the roof. So that's the story I was telling myself. So my body, based on that being the filter. So I can go into a little bit of the science, but you got your reticular activating system, which is basically, that's in the back part of our brain. That's the filter of our mind. And if we're constantly telling that filter, oh, look, there's another thing that's going wrong. Oh, look, there's another thing that's going wrong. That's the filter that your body's going to keep looking for, because that's what you're saying that it's supposed to find, because it's there to protect you. So the process of actually saying, okay, yes, that's there. I'm not saying that that's going away, but I'm intentionally focusing my awareness and my feelings and my focus to what is going right. So it was the process of getting up, and instead of going in what feels easier to just stay in that path of everything that's going wrong, it was getting up and saying, okay, but this happened yesterday, but my daughter actually did sleep through the night. Matt's going to the gym because he's healthy and he can go to work and create this life for us. Or, some days it was like, I'm grateful for gravity because how freaking hard would this be if I was like floating through the air, right? It's like, it was literally like, just sit in these spaces of really paying attention to what is going right. And then what you start to tell that filter is, I want more of this. So it becomes this process of, you start the action of moving that momentum in another direction, your body and your mind starts to respond to that and work with you. And that's what was so crazy. It was like, I'm waking up, I'm literally intentionally writing what I'm grateful for. That's how I'm starting my day. And then allowing myself to sit in the feeling of it. Because I can sit here and say, I'm grateful that we're having this conversation, or I can sit right in it and say, how cool is it that I get to be in this moment? Josh is in Wisconsin. We're here in Pennsylvania, and we get to have this conversation together. Like, there's so much gratitude that you can create feelings within yourself to almost replay that emotion, to create that within your body, which then, you're shifting your mind, you're shifting your nervous system, you're shifting your physical health. It just becomes such a powerful starting point. And that's what was the biggest aha for me in that season. Say 3 weeks before I started my practice, I would go to Target and my 2-year-old would like lose her mind, right? In one of the aisles. And I would be like, I can't handle this. I would basically be crying there with her, but then 3 weeks into this practice of just being intentional of same experiences, different outlook, we'd go into the same store, the same thing would happen. And I find myself laughing and I'm like, oh my God, I got this. Like, you do you, I got this. I'm going to keep shopping. Like, we're going to get you snacks. Like it shifted my capacity to hold those moments of intensity and show up for them in a different way. And I think that's why we're so passionate about it, because it's not about shifting that external environment first. It's about shifting the perspective first to then allow the external environment to start to shift.
Yeah, it's all the internal work first.
Yes.
Matthew, how about you?
I'll speak for myself, but I see this as a common thread. Men tend to focus as a provider instinct on what could go wrong so they can make sure they can stop it before it happens.
Mm-hmm.
This mental exercise consumes so much of our day, because we're living in this hypothetical future standpoint of what could go wrong, and I'm going to keep maneuvering so it doesn't happen, right? Well, what I was finding and reviewing my own psyche after adopting this practice of focusing on gratitude, and I had been doing this for years, but I had never been this intentional. Like, I would go in and out of phases, but this was like stacking day after day after day. And I was like, wow, I'm not spending all this energy wasted on what could go wrong. And, let me bring this into a really practical. Like, if I was going to meet with a client to roll over assets, right? I would think of all of their objections first. And I would be like, all right, I got this. I'm ready for anything they can throw at me. I would sit down and there would be no objections, because I was so locked into the present moment that I was just caring about them. I had listened to everything that they wanted to accomplish. I knew that most people didn't care as much as I did. So all I had to do was show up, be present, and the money would roll over. I was like, well, that was easier. So just the habit stacking of being present, pulling into this breath, it just saved me so much energy.
Yeah, so much. That's amazing. Let's talk a little bit about the science, because I think there's probably some people that are, still iffy. Like, they get that gratitude's a good thing, but they don't understand necessarily how it actually could transform their life. So talk a little bit about the neural pathways, all the reticular activating system, whatever else you got that can help them understand that this is truly transformational.
Yes. Yeah. So if you think about how most people are operating their day, where Matt's talking about of like, it's that protection mode. It's like, I have to be prepared and I have to almost be alert. So when we're operating from that place, we're operating from more of the reptilian part of our brain. It's the survival space. And our mind does not know the difference between a real threat and a perceived threat. So like an email from a coworker that makes you angry, that's a threat to your brain. It used to, have to run away from saber-toothed tigers, and now it's, consumed with emails or arguments and things like that. So when we have those things that happen in our life, it drops us from our logical, really more connected part of our brain to that protective space. And it brings us back into like, my only job right now is to survive. And when we spend a lot of time operating from that place, we cannot connect to our empathy. We can't really connect to the clarity of the present moment, because when you're operating from that space, your nervous system is also operating from that space. And with your nervous system, you have the sympathetic part of your nervous system, and then you have the parasympathetic part of your nervous system. So the sympathetic part of your nervous system, that's fight or flight. That's where we're operating from overwhelm, where we're kind of in overdrive all the time. And then in that parasympathetic state, that's the part where we can rest and digest and really allow the body to heal and slow down and be in the present moment. So that connection with the mind and the nervous system, when we're really operating from that just go, 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 survive, like hustle all of the time, we're doing ourselves a disservice from really connecting to who we are, like what Matt's talking about. Like, we are these beings that have evolved to operate from the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of our brain that is the empathy. It's the connection. It's really the alignment with our true selves. And when we start to practice gratitude, that's been the beautiful thing with the science, has been able to show that when you shift into this place of gratitude and this intentional practice of gratitude, you're shifting from that protective place and working from the more reptilian part of the brain, and you're actually creating more activity in that prefrontal cortex. So you're literally shifting where you're operating from in your brain, which is shifting how you're showing up in the world. And like what Matt's talking about, it's like, if I think we all have those moments where we know we are so fully present and locked in because we have, we're centered and we're confident in what we're doing. That gratitude practice really helps get us into those spaces so we can show up in the world as we want to. And I think that's been the biggest shift for me, is really understanding the connections of, like, at first it was such like this beautiful transformation. And then when you back into it, it's like, yeah, there's so much logic here too, that you're like, wow, no wonder I feel so much better. I'm telling my body it's safe. Like, for the last 4 years, most of us have not told our body that we are safe. We've been in this heightened state of awareness. And I think, there's just an opportunity to just really settle into the feeling of that connecting back to that presence and that parasympathetic state that we are meant to operate from.
And I wanted to share something fun. Like, we are such a results-oriented society, particularly here in America. So 7 years ago, if you remember, the keto diet was like all the rage.
All the rage.
Yep.
Now, the only way to measure if you're in ketosis is to do a blood panel. But there is a feeling of ketosis that everyone describes, and they do not need to get blood work to describe it. So we were talking about that, and I was one morning, I was like, Shannon, Google gratosis. Like, the process, state, or condition of gratitude. Does that word exist? And it was nowhere to be found. So we called our trademark attorney, like literally a couple of days later. I was like, trademark that word, because my dream is that gratosis becomes a board certified diagnosis, because when you wire and fire your neurons this way and you're creating those new neural pathways, you can have a brain scan done on your brain to see that it's different. And for the first time in history, I would like us to start being goal-focused humans on a positive diagnosis to change the entire paradigm in Western medicine. Yeah,
that's so good. I mean, all the stuff you talked about, I'll give a little context, and I've mentioned this before, because one of the only areas of science that I nerd out in is neuroscience. That's the only science, quote unquote, science that actually interests me. We're so far behind on brain science. Yes. And it's because the fMRI, the brain scans that you're talking about, were only invented like in between 30 and 40 years ago.
Yes.
Whereas we've been able to study the body for nearly a century. We've only been able to truly study the brain the last 30 to 40 years. And so the neural pathways recreating, seeing what lights up, what doesn't light up in our brains, how we actually can reorganize, if you will, our brain based on gratosis. And it's just amazing to see. So I think that, you guys continue to push this needle, like, we're not far away from it. Well, it'll take a big, heavy lift, right? Matt, you gave me some numbers yesterday or 2 days ago when we were communicating via text. What were the numbers? What was the lift that you said? Because I found it pretty interesting. It was like 200,000 people.
Yeah, roughly. The mathematical formula is around 200,000 people would impact the entire world.
So, why do you say that? Why is the number 200,000?
So I had just been doing some research on the math equations on how do you create social movements. And, like, there's that one video I love watching on, if you've ever seen it, how to create a social movement. There's a guy dancing in the field.
Yes. And it's the second one, right?
Yeah. So you've got the lone nut, right? Dance in the field. So Shannon and I are those lone nuts for, I feel like, 6 years.
Yes.
And then you've got your first follower. And that first follower comes in, and now you're no longer a lone nut. You're starting to create some synergies, right? And then you see that entire field just start dancing to the music. And then, if you remember that video, if you were not dancing in the field, then you became the outcast. So when you just think about math and how it works, I mean, compound interest, Albert Einstein said it's the eighth wonder of the world. you just extrapolate out how it would work to get the movement around gratitude as a social phenomenon. That's how I think about it all day long.
That's awesome. So 200,000 people. So let's talk a little bit about the motion of gratitude and how, well, we'll first talk about how an individual can get involved. And let's say they love everything they've heard so far. And then we'll work towards the schools and the companies and how you guys are deploying towards that. So how can an individual get involved if they're like, boom, this message resonates? What do I got to do?
Yeah. So right now, we have a 28-day experience for the individuals that they know that this is something that they want to do and they need some accountability and structure. So that was the one thing that I found when I got started. There wasn't, besides people doing, a challenge and saying, do this one day, do that the next day, do that. And it's like, I don't know. There's too many different things to do. I wanted to create a structure around it to really support people to feel into the shifts and changes and actually create enough time to feel that one habit before moving into something else. So every week really builds upon itself. And what we've done is we've created a physical product and a digital experience for people. I find that for me personally, and through a lot of the research we've done, it makes such a difference when you physically have something that you're really writing into and expanding into. So we've created beautiful journals that are a space for people to really experience those 28 days. And then we created a digital app in this world of like complete distractions. I was not going to put this on social media for people to then get lost on the internet again. So we wanted to create an app where it's like, you go in here, you're here for one thing. There's no distraction. You are here for gratitude. And every day has a video to either provide science, provide more like information and resources, or even just support to keep you going through the 28 days. And then with that, every week, there's an additional practice that comes on it. So if you're an individual looking to go through that experience, that's available on the Motion of Gratitude website, which is themotionofgratitude.com. And we've created really 3 different editions for people to meet them where they are. There's some people who are like, I already have a journal, but I want this practice. We created something for them. And then we also have the people who are like, I want this to be a special experience for me. So we've created more of a gift edition where they can really just have this beautiful, beautiful box, beautiful journal, bracelets, beautiful experience to go through it to its fullest.
That's awesome. I meant to mention this earlier when we were talking about the science, but you cannot feel stressed and blessed at the same time.
Yes.
So doctors, scientists, fMRI has proven that. It doesn't, you cannot, so you can alter your state immediately by changing from stress to thinking about gratitude.
Yes.
So if because we have a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of leaders that listen to this show or watch this show, if you're feeling that stress, like this is something I want to challenge you to get on that 28-day challenge, because I feel I'm a business owner, run many businesses over the last 20 years. Stress is commonplace, but it doesn't have to be. And that's what Shannon and Matthew are really trying to push, is making sure that we can live in this state of gratosis, that we can live in this state of peace and harmony and love. And that's what gratitude is. Those things are byproducts of living in a state of gratitude. So I want to tee up Matthew on this. I'm going to give a little context. So this is going to come out Christmas Eve because I wanted to have them on because it's the perfect season for gratitude. And I said this in the episode I dropped this week on the 12 days of leadership. And I know that because I've lost a loved one, and I know many others may not feel gratosis during this time of year because they've lost a loved one. But even so, even if we're mourning the loss of a loved one, like Shannon mentioned earlier, there's a ton we can be grateful for, from gravity to, which that's a hilarious one. It's so true, but it's like, yeah, if we didn't have gravity, we'd be floating up in the sky. That'd be hard. But that being said, from our health, from the fact that we have all fingers or toes or our 4 limbs, whatever it may be, like there's a ton to be in gratitude about. And secondly, we just had a school shooting here this week, the moment that we're recording, in Madison, Wisconsin. And these guys are doing some powerful work in the schools and trying to be proactive with our youth. For those that don't know, suicide attempts and actual suicides over the last 4 years have skyrocketed. We don't even have all the numbers post-COVID. We have the numbers almost, I think, to 2021. So we don't even have the numbers for the last 3 years, but we know that they've completely gone up in the wrong direction. That doesn't even have to do with some of the school shootings or anything else. It has to do with people's mental health, our youth and their mental health being deeply affected by all the aspects of our current society. And so this is a team, a couple that is pushing a mission to be proactive about our youth's mental health. And I know that a lot of adults are listening to this, and you may be in a position of influence to get the motion of gratitude into schools, into your companies. Matthew, talk about some of that work, because it's amazing what you guys have got, who you've gotten into already, and how much work we have yet to go with it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'll share two things. So, I mean, as parents, whenever you see that come across the news, your heart plummets. We all send our children, well, not all of us, but we send our kids to school every day, praying that they're safe and all the due diligence that we did to put them there. And with what's going on, about 1 in 4 kids in America right now are battling some type of mental hurdle. And what we tend to do as a society is focus on crisis management. And there is a place for that, and it's required. And that requires very, very intelligent, educated people to swarm around those individuals to help them pull up. That's not the work that we do. And the focus that we have is on offense. So I try to be a little light with this topic because it's an intense one. If we had Ice Cream Awareness Month, we would all eat a lot of ice cream. You're bringing to the surface a situation that you're saying, don't do this. In the same way that when we were 5 years old, if our parents said, don't do that, we did that. The human brain does not understand negation. So what I'm passionate about, and Shannon, is helping in the schools to go on offense, to focus on what's going right in the child's life. There are hundreds of steps before getting to crisis management. And if we do micro steps all along the way as parents, caregivers, teachers, the community as a whole, then we can be on offense to identify people that are in harder times faster and more consistently. There will also be a social movement created with the youth to say, let's all help each other, and let's learn how to activate these inner voices inside of us so that we know that we want to do good, because the human experience is a miracle. So we want to highlight that miracle.
Yes.
Do you want to add anything? And then I can talk a little bit about corporate if you want to add to the schools.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that comes up for me with the schools is when you look to this next generation, they're growing up in a completely different world than all of us did. And right now, in talking to the schools and even talking to other parents and being deep in it ourselves, these children need tools. Like, they need tools that they can reach for, that they feel empowered in those moments to start to support themselves. And that's what we want to do. We want to show them, like, you have these already inside of you. You just have to understand how to get there, and even, as we're talking about the impacts on the mind and the brain, it's like, how can we help get this information to the next generation so they don't feel helpless? They don't feel like they can't do anything about their situation. And to be in such, in the conversations that we've started to have in these school settings, we are at a vast difference of some of the most well-known high schools in the country, and even talking to a school that's for foster children. So we are talking the spectrum when it comes to the diversity and who we are really going into these settings with. And the commonality is, it's gratitude and helping this generation connect to, one, the present moment, because they're so disconnected between this world, because they can basically hop on a device and be anywhere they want to. So connecting them back to the present moment, and also helping them to see, when they're comparing themselves to their friends on social media, or they're, seeing everybody else live their life and they think that they have this horrible, life when they might be living something beautiful that they're missing. How do we help them connect back to that? And that's really Yeah, as a mom, it just drives me every day. This started with how can we support the caregivers? And that's a big piece of what we're doing. So it's like, how can we support the caregivers and now support that next generation to say, hey, we're going to meet you right where we are. And we're here to support you, to empower you to know you don't need us all the time. Like, how can you find these tools that are helpful for you to say you have the power to do this and you have this knowledge and this understanding. So when you're in those situations, trust yourself and you can show up. So,
and a lot of the caregivers, teachers, people that are holding space for other individuals around this country are completely burnt out.
Yeah.
So they need tools as well so that they can reactivate the inner desire to want to be able to handle these really intense circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and my heart and mind went immediately to the teachers and staff at that school because I know some of them and the mental battles that they're going to face. And
yes.
This happened just before, Christmas of all times. But at the same time, like you just said, teachers as a whole are burnt out because a lot of parents are essentially having the teachers parent their kids.
Yes.
And it's an impossible task for many of them. And these people went into this career knowing they weren't going to get paid a ton.
Yes.
So they had a heart for our youth, a heart for caring, a heart for giving back to what I call our nation's most valuable assets, which is our kids.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, you're spot on there, Matt. They are burnt out and they need the resources themselves. And the kids, if they can develop these skills on their own, it takes some of that burden off of them.
Yeah.
Right.
And in the parents' defense, they're as burnt out. I mean, so many families have to both people in the couple have to work. They're running hard and fast. They're charging. So we're in this hustle culture. And I think we all have to take a little bit of a step back and say what really, really matters. And it is the relationships, it's the humans, and it's connectivity.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, talk about the corporate side of things, or not even just corporate, because we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen. They may want to deploy it into their own company, but how are you seeing that from the wellness perspective of our corporate structure?
Yes. So this one I get really excited about, Josh, because I spend so much time with executives, leaders, and what I observed for myself and the people that I was spending a lot of time with over the last 20 years is the leaders in the room were always putting themselves in uncomfortable situations to grow. Like they were obsessed. That's their personalities.
I can relate.
I know. That's about 1% to 5% of the population. Then you have this massive group of humans that make everything work. It's all the employees that smile at the front desk when you walk in the door. They're the ones making sure all the paperwork's getting done so that the yes or the promise that you've made is completed. They're the people that I want to breathe into. I want to help leadership teams to breathe into all the employees, to show their employees that I care about you. I care about the holistic well-being of your life as not only an employee, but a mother or a father, or a daughter or a son. And COVID really created division inside of the workforce by accident. So many humans have defaulted to isolation as their now lived experience, which is very hard to create meaningful change inside of corporations that way. And I really want to help people come back to center. And I haven't found anyone that disagrees on gratitude. So what I've been studying and talking to so many leaders about is when we think of these initiatives that are happening inside of corporations right now that are highlighting all the things that we disagree about. And, in 2023, $8 billion is spent on DEI. And so many executives say, this is not working. This is dividing our people. It's not bringing us together. Mm-hmm. So I have found that gratitude is a beautiful bridge to connect humans, not to create 100% agreement. And that's not the point. The point is to have the ability to create an empathetic viewpoint of the other person's lived experience so that you can respect them.
Yeah, that's so good. I've heard you say that a few times and it hits so well every time I hear you say it, because you're right. And, we were at a company that a DEI was a big push and for good intentions, but it also did cause divide. And I think a lot of corporations will feel that. And you see a lot of them in the news now, from Walmart to, I think that was the biggest one. But so, like, there was a list of 20 that have abandoned their DEI budgets over the last few months.
Yes. And I don't think we should abandon the idea of it. I think we need to rewrite the story on how to implement it. And I believe that DEI will now be wellness, and it will be the holistic well-being of the employee, so that they need to be able to regulate their own nervous system so they can show up and do the work that they want to do. And the amount of inefficiencies and lost time to the bottom line because of mental health issues, it's one of the largest reasons that companies have inefficiencies.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention when Shannon was talking about schools, but I've seen some of the artwork in the journals that you guys did. Absolutely incredible. Like, the kids will love these.
Yes, we found an incredible. I obviously had the vision of what I was really hoping to bring to life, because I wanted it to feel like an experience, for this generation. And we found somebody who could just truly bring it to life. And we're so excited. Our grade school workbook is complete. Our high school workbook just got completed yesterday. So we're really excited to be able to bring those into the spaces and get kids off of technology. Because obviously for the adults, we have the technology on the app, but so much of the feedback, and intuitively, we're like, we need to have a space where kids can get back to writing and be off the devices. So we're really excited with how they turned out.
Yeah. Well, I want to compliment you guys. You nailed it. They look so good. It actually kind of reminds me of how Andy Frisella did his kids' books. Like, they're so useful, and they're teaching lessons, and they're teaching real practical stuff that unfortunately our kids don't teach or our schools don't teach our kids.
Right.
And it's real life things that are going to be necessary for all of us.
Yes.
So if an entrepreneur or corporation wanted to go down that path, does that look like a 28-day challenge, or how does that look in the corporate setting?
So with the corporate kickoff, we do, depending on what the company wants, whether they want us to do a kickoff and be on, come in and do a kickoff. They all get the gift edition, which is a nice journal with 2 bracelets, access to the app, and they do it as a cohort together to create that momentum inside of the corporation. So we guide them along the way. We do pre and post assessments to see how it's working for their employees. And, the thing that drove me a little crazy about this stuff, Josh, is most of these programs were costing companies tens of thousands of dollars. And Shannon and I wanted to create a program for each employee to be around a tank of gas. So it's approachable, it's meaningful, and you can measure the impact that it's having on your corporation, not on the bottom line. It's not that linear, what we do. You're measuring it by eye contact and smiles. But we know, whether you're doing an EOS strategy, we know that human capital is an incredibly large part of the valuation of an organization, particularly if it's in an exit planning. So if the people are not happy and working together in alignment, a company's not going to buy that company.
Yeah. Unless they're really profitable, but then they'll go and offload them real quick just for a quick buck. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, just to add a little bit on that too. So we have, with the corporations that we've worked with, we will take them through that experience, but we want it to be more hands-on, and we want it to feel like something that they are experiencing all together. So as I mentioned, kind of taking that off of the leader and us having the conversation of like, we're going to take you through a gratitude initiative and a challenge, and we're going to be there for you along the way and do those biweekly check-ins. So like, when it's not, like, if something's not clicking, or it's like, we get to have that connection point for them to be more hands-on, and then allow them to really experience it together without somebody in that community having to like be the one that's kind of holding it all together. Yeah. And we found both in the corporate and in the education space, that's what people are looking for. It's like, I don't need one more thing that I have to implement. It's like, yeah, that's for us to do. You get to show up, do it all together, and be a part of it. So that's been our biggest hope.
You've seen this, Josh, like, you would have speakers come in, they do a great speech. I mean, it gets everyone fired up, and then the meeting ends and everyone's emails dinging.
Yeah.
So I want to do all of those things. I want to fly in. I want to have those conversations, but I don't want it to end there. I want each of these people to have something to implement on a daily basis to create momentum so that when that executive or leader looks at the program that they implemented, they're like, that actually shifted and people felt the impact of the motion of gratitude showing up in our organization.
Yeah, you're so right. Speakers can get you fired up for a moment, and then all of a sudden, or we go to an annual meeting or an immersion experience,
Yep.
and it's great, and then we don't do anything with the lessons when we come home because
Exactly.
the emails, the kids, everything gets in our way of actually implementing what we were supposed to have learned.
Yes.
So that's spot on. I want to shift gears as we bring it down the home stretch because you guys have just such a beautiful marriage, and I was, I'm blessed to have a beautiful marriage as well, but a lot of people don't. I want to see from your guys' perspective, how has this practice that both of you have adopted helped and really poured into your marriage as a whole?
Want me to go first? You want to go first? I think that this practice, for me, I think one of the biggest things that this just really being intentional with gratitude, being intentional with presence, it's just created a different level of connection, one from present moment, but I think it's also allowed me to just be in a space where I know that I'm on my journey of exploration and understanding who I am and respecting Matt on his journey too, and knowing we're in this together and it doesn't have to look the same. I think so many times we want to convince our partner to like be this person or do things our way. And I think so much of what this practice has been is just an appreciation of who he is as a human on a different level, who he is as a father and how he shows up in this world. It's allowed me to see those things where before it was like, well, why is he doing it this way or this and that? And it's just, for me, it's just been this beautiful connection to keep coming back to really acknowledge and actually feel into those moments of beauty and connection. Like I think so many times, especially, we've been married for 13 years. It's not sunshine and roses all the time. But if you're not creating those opportunities to say, look at what he did, even this little moment, like he folded the laundry, he took care of the kids. He did bedtime last night so I could be at my breathwork class. Like these little things that we lose, and we can write a completely different story about the human really quickly. Again, if we let our mind go down this route of what's going wrong, like we have to create moments in our relationships to look at even those small moments of what's going right and feel into that and really create opportunities to show that appreciation. So I know for me, it's just shifted the way we communicate. It's shifted the way we see each other, in marriage, in life. Doing business together is a whole different world, So he used to be gone for 10 to 12 hours a day. So it's just been this beautiful way for us to choose to live life together and just see life from just a different perspective. That's my long answer, but.
So when I think of this, Josh, when Shannon and I got married, I wore a suit to work every day. I drove a luxury sports car. I had a nice watch, and the trajectory and the path of our forward living was pretty predictable, And if our marriage wasn't rooted in gratitude, all of the pivots that I've made in the last 4 years, I don't know how it would work. From the journey I've been on in my own healing, and also even coming downstairs one day and say, I'm not going to be a financial planner anymore. And Shannon literally was like, I think you took 3 deep breaths. And we're like, okay, we'll figure it out. And I think we as married couples have to keep turning towards each other and finding that gratitude in our marriage, because the challenges of marriage more often than not are not rooted from our relationship, but our external environment. And that's particularly if you're a mother and father. Those little munchkins out there, they're really good at dividing us. And they're smart. And I'm grateful that they're smart, and I want them to be really smart. But the one thing that I find that is one of the really good exercises on like a how-to, when Shannon and I are really on the opposite page, which happens, sometimes we'll talk to each other about what we're grateful for about each other to each other's faces, and we'll hold hands. And I promise you, if you're in a disagreement with your spouse and you hold their hand and start saying what you're grateful for about them, it will take about 3 minutes for you to start laughing and you will pull right up.
I would guess it'd probably take less than 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Yep.
And it's comical. And it's like, we'll laugh, we'll kiss, shake it off. And then we'll remember that it's us on a united front against those 3 little munchkins out there. And it's a beautiful conclusion to an argument that probably didn't even stem from our disagreement.
Yeah, here's another hack for men out there. That's a great example that you gave. Next time you're in an argument with your spouse, stop yourself and just go hug her. Don't say a word. Just go hug her.
That's all she needs.
Yeah.
Well, because oftentimes, like Matt touched on it earlier, is like we're such protectors, providers. We love to solve problems. We want to solve all the problems. And our spouses oftentimes don't want us to solve a problem. And so you learn that it was, okay, so I learned, do you want to be heard right now, or do you want my help? Do you want me to solve? Because my brain's automatically goes solving. Yep. So I just need to know what posture I need to take in this. Then I was like, oh, there's an iteration of that. So now it's heard, helped, or hugged.
I like that.
I like that a lot.
And so it's like the 3 H's when stuff gets tense, because even if you have a beautiful marriage like Matthew and Shannon, like stuff comes up and you get on opposites and stuff like that. So, and same with Jenna and I, it happens. Yes. And so it's heard, helped, or hugged. And one thing you brought up really quickly, like you glazed over really briefly, telling the story about how Shannon took 3 deep breaths. If Shannon wasn't rooted, A, in your guys' marriage, B, in gratitude and herself, there's a lot of women out there that would go immediately think to, well, I'm used to this lifestyle and you're choosing not to do that anymore, and have a whole lot of different feelings about your choice to stop doing that. So I just wanted to point that out really quick, because that's kudos to Shannon and the work she's done, and obviously the love that she has for you. But that's why choosing the right partner is probably the second most important decision you'll ever make in your life. One, choosing God would be the top one for me, and then choosing the right partner in life.
Yes. We talk about that a lot. It's like that deep rooting is so important, because the storm's coming for everybody. Who knows what it looks like, but that rooting is so important.
Last question as we're wrapping up on time. Matt, we've spent some time together, and one of the things that I'm impressed with when you're around, so we've been in groups together where we're learning, and we got a lot of type A men around us, and Matthew will be like, I'm going to go meditate, or I'm going to go ground. Like, he's just going to take his time. Right. So talk to the men quick, and why your routine and why you choose, but let me set the context even further. Like, we're doing some fun things together. We're in some really powerful conversations together. And Matthew's so grounded in his well-being and his routines that he's just like, I'm going to pull myself out of this for a moment and go take care of myself, and I'll be back in a little bit. So talk about that a little bit, and how important and why that's important to you.
So I've been, over the last couple of years now, I focus on when I feel my nervous system getting out of whack. And I also observe myself from an outside perspective. When that happens, am I adding or taking away from the dialogues that I'm participating in? And what I've noticed is when my nervous system, I call it tapped out, tapped in or tapped out. When I'm tapped out, anything that I would be participating in, I'm not bringing anything valuable to the situation, because I'm just going to either start bringing in my own bias or my own fears, and I might project them onto someone else when that wasn't appropriate or necessary. So, and some people think I'm a little weird sometimes when I do that, right? Like that's the criticism I might face. But for me, it's been so important to step away from situations when I know that I can't add to them and be productive. And I even might take away from them by being in the room.
That is so powerful. And I know the work you've done on yourself, but it's just interesting to me. So I'll take it from, we all hear of the introvert extrovert example. I think, knowing you're probably more ambiverted like me. you straddle that line based
Yep.
on if we're looking at the culture index again, I bet your dot is probably right on that line or near it, which mine is just to the right of the line. I think it overcrosses a little bit. So we both can act very extroverted, but we recharge introverted.
Correct.
And that's what extrovert introvert is really about, is where do you draw your energy from? And so understanding your body enough and mind enough to know, hey, if I go to a networking event, if I'm in a group of people, like I can be the extrovert, but when that battery's tapped, it's not recharging around those people, it's recharging on my own.
Yeah. And even for me, like now I know I think of myself like a battery. So if I'm now draining below the line, I'm thinking about what am I sacrificing in the future by making this choice right now? And is it worth that sacrifice?
Yeah, that's so good. Well, one of the things that I've done this year, and I was thinking about it, I was looking at it last night. So I think I told you, Matthew, I took from the gap and the gain to write down
book.
3 wins of each day. And I've done that every day this year. And what I found last night is, yeah, they were wins, but I was also they were mostly gratitudes.
Yeah.
Because I was starting, like, we're in December now, we're at the end of December, and I can't wait on December 31st to like just go through the whole book, the whole journal. But I was thumbing through it last night as I was laying in bed, and yeah, they're mostly gratitudes.
That's so cool.
And it's been a really powerful exercise this year. It's the first time I've ever done it. And Jenna knows as soon as I hop in bed, I grab that journal and write down. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 6, depending on how the day was. But for anyone that wants to dive in, whether getting the Motion of Gratitude book, journal, and doing that, whether you do just gratitudes, whether you do wins or a mix of the two, it has been awesome.
It's amazing.
That's amazing.
So
yeah, it's just setting you up for the next day, because now you're going to sleep with that being the last thought, with that being what settles the nervous system. It's just this beautiful cycle.
Yeah. And I think, like, everyone talks about their morning routine. Their bedtime ritual is so critical.
yeah, I agree. What's yours?
Yeah, it depends on whether I'm tapped in or tapped out. We go into these seasons, so I would not project any form of perfection around what I do every day. But I find is, like, the thing that has been the most balanced approach to gratitude is I pray every night through Thanksgiving from the minute I wake up in the morning throughout the day. So I'll think of all of the circumstances, and it's kind of funny. Usually around 4 p.m. of the day, I fall asleep. So I'll get to sometime around dinner time, and I won't make it after that in terms of my gratitude. So I do that every night, and I always fall asleep thinking about what went right. And that's probably been consistent for about a decade now.
Oh, that's awesome. Shannon, anything you do for nighttime routine?
Yeah. So I've gotten very deep into breath work the last 2 years. In the same way gratitude was so impactful to really experience that we carry this with us, I realized how powerful our breath is. And so many of us understand the impact of what it can do when we're feeling anxious and overwhelmed. But I think so many of us are missing breath as a tool. So about a year and a half ago, I actually got certified as a breathwork facilitator, because I'm like, we're carrying this around. We all got to figure out how to use it. So I'm someone that goes to the breath at bedtime. There's some great breath practices that you can do to really, again, get you from that sympathetic state into the parasympathetic nervous system, settle the body and settle the mind. So I'd say that's my tool right before bedtime, is just little 4-7-8 breath pattern. So you breathe in for 4, hold for 7 at the top, and breathe out for 8. That extended exhale is so powerful to really settle the nervous system and get you into that parasympathetic state. So that's my simple practice and process right before bedtime.
I love it. I've taught my anxious thirdborn a lot about breath.
It's so powerful. Yes.
Yeah, we had a night with her last night. So it's just one of those things. So she gets hangry easy. The food didn't work last night either.
Yeah.
So feeding her didn't work last.
Yes.
Usually we can tell when she starts getting an attitude. Oh, you need some food. Last night that didn't do the trick either. But We try breath work. We try getting her isolated, all the different things to make her feel comfortable. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's about getting them tools to help themselves as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. And practicing.
Yeah, starting at the foundation so they can find what works.
I love yoga. And if a yoga teacher ever comes to me and says, like, I figured out how to do yoga, I'll run. Because yoga is a lifelong practice. Breath is, gratitude is. And the beautiful part of it is if this day didn't play out exactly as you wanted it to, you can wake up tomorrow and reset.
All right. Final question I always ask. And you may each have a different one, but what's an unpopular belief that you hold to be true that most would disagree with on?
You can go first on this one. I got to think about this one for a second.
In the current culture, my belief is that it's not popular, is that you have to slow down and pause every day, multiple times a day, and be by yourself.
So you're saying that you need to.
You need to, yeah. When I'm looking at most people's calendars now, or people that I talk to, like every minute is scheduled, and they're just going from one to the next, one video call to the next video call, or to the meeting. There's no break in the action. There's no opportunity to pause and love themselves and care about themselves.
Well, our next book for Book and Bourbon Club is The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. So
perfect. I'll be in good company with that author.
Yeah, I think the first thought that comes to mind for me, and I feel like again, the science is starting to catch up for people, but in the same way, talking about breath, I believe that it's actually our nervous system is what's showing up in the rooms, not ourselves. So when we can connect to that and really learn to support the nervous system, work with it, we can actually shift how we're showing up and actually do the things and do the work that we want to do. But I think for so long, it's like your energy is showing up in the room, but your nervous system is really running the show. So how do you really connect to that and be able to support it so that way you can show up in these spaces as you want to?
That's awesome. All right. I want to leave the Spartan audience with this. This is coming out on Christmas Eve. It's the spirit of Christmas. Give Matthew and Shannon a follow. They have an amazing podcast as well. It's called The Motion of Gratitude, right?
Yes.
Yep. Keeping everything branding aligned. Right. I love it.
Yeah. Keep it simple for everybody.
So follow that and get engaged with this. Be a part of the cause. And I'll ask for a personal Christmas gift as well. Just please share this episode. Like, subscribe. I haven't asked for reviews in a while. That'd be awesome. Give us a Christmas present that way as we continue to give back to you all and these great episodes, great guests. So awesome spending time with you two, as always.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Josh. This was wonderful.
Yeah. Thanks for pouring into the Spartan audience. Spartans, you know what to do. Share it far and wide. Please give us that Christmas present. Give them feedback as well. Our guests always love to know what the biggest takeaways were. Remember, the good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.
This is Sparta!